Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Local Cast. I'm your host, Nick Harmon. With us today, Rebecca Woodbury. Rebecca is the owner of Gravitas Publications, Nacho Cat, and Ratataz. Author of children's educational books and pioneer in the art of learning design. Started chatting at my friend's salon. We met, and her story just greatly interested me, and I had to find out more. She was gracious enough to invite me to her studio, where we do a deep dive into the art of learning and how she came to be such a prolific pioneer in this super challenging industry. Without further ado, Rebecca Woodbury.
18 years.
Gravitas
Publications.
You've had
and I'll
for
show you
18
the
years.
publication site in a second.
Okay.
And the Nacho Cat is my new company, and it's the company that's creating these Ratataz kits. So the Ratataz kits are what we're trying to get into schools, private schools, public schools, and so on.
Nacho Cat.
Nacho Cat.
That's a great
cat?
name.
Nacho Cat. So the Ratataz logo has a mouse.
And we're talking about learning.
I just
Bria
text.
Kennedy.
I just-
Anyways, we obviously go to a very good
nice
hairstylist,
hair
and then I ruin it by wearing a hat. Rebecca. So then we were at the hair salon with Bria. Bria was doing my hair, and we sort of got to chatting, and we started talking about learning and like what you do, and I was talking about podcasts a little bit, and I just found it extremely fascinating that you what you do for a living, because we started talking about learning and school, and it segued into all this stuff, and then I was like, well, we should do a podcast, and so here we are, and we're doing a podcast, and we're in the studio. What is there a name for the headquarters?
We just call it the warehouse.
The warehouse, and behind us you see some of these tubs, and I did a little bit of a walkthrough, but basically you're putting together these curriculums for kids.
Correct.
To
Science.
Learn better.
Right. I mean, so Ratataz is all about getting kids to learn science in a way that complements their individual learning style. So it's all about their questions, their answers, what they're interested in, but it's geared towards understanding science and technology at a deeper level. So it's solid science, it's real chemistry and real physics, but it's geared towards younger kids.
And so two things. Normally this science at this depth isn't really geared towards younger kids. Stop me
Correct.
if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And then secondly, it's not explained, if it is given to these kids, it's not explained in such a way where that they would be interested or even care about it.
Well, yeah, and here I have something I can show you on that. Good, I'm glad. I like working in a world where there's no rules, because I just do my own thing. Okay, so here's the problem, right? This is the problem. You have your standard grades 1 through 12 textbook. Grades 4 through 8 get this watered down science. It's all weather, plants, animals for.
So maybe science doesn't start until grade 4, really.
Yeah, so maybe grades 4 through 8, it's 1 through 8 is sort of watered down. Sometimes you get science topics in grades 6, 7, and 8, but grades 1 through 4, 4 through 8 are really sort of watered down.
Okay.
And then grades 9 through 12, you get this huge jump. And all of a sudden you have to do atoms and molecules and force and energy and photosynthesis and chemical reactions and xylem and phloem, all of these vocabulary. This is the problem. You get all this watered down science, and then when you get to high school, you've never seen any of it before. Then what I wanted to do with Real Science for Kids and Ratataz is actually give kids these, starting in grade 1, give kids, a nice little way to get from all the way up to high school, learning the vocabulary. And science is a language. If you don't know how to speak the don't know the
Just
vocabulary.
like mathematics,
Yeah.
you've got to learn
Or numbers first,
elementary
exactly.
elementary levels of before you get to algebra
Yeah.
and then college algebra, and it just keeps expanding from there.
So that's the basic, background for why I did this. It's like if you had kids learning about these concepts at a younger level and repeating that, they're learning the language of science, and by the time they get to high school, they can speak the language and they can decide if they want to do more science or go into journalism and write about science, but they're going to be able to communicate in that language better.
Well, and so what interests me is, so a little bit of background. You have a doctorate in
biophysical chemistry.
Yeah, I would have not.
I just couldn't make up my mind what I wanted. Biology, physics.
You like to learn, though.
I do.
So learning has been a big part of your life, and I mean that you devoted such a large amount of time to it. So then, after you were you got your doctorate, what were you doing after that?
So I got married. And had kids, and I was doing the traditional, tenure track. This was back in the 90s, and still when you are a woman in the tenure track and you have kids, you get put on what's called the mommy track. So,
oh, interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, and so it was going to be difficult to pursue any kind of, it's possible, it's not impossible, but my husband at the time was also a professor.
That mommy track, that's a real track?
It's a real track. You get put on the mommy track. In other words, you're not viewed as going to be very successful if you have kids.
Okay.
Still happens.
Crazy.
And it was big back when I did a couple of postdocs. I did one at UC Berkeley. And it was very clear, there was one couple there that he wanted to have kids, but she was a professor in Berkeley, and she's like, no kids because it puts me on the mommy track. And I just saw that in my own, right? Once I started having kids, difficult to get postdoctoral positions, difficult to get, to have your postdocs turn into professor positions. If you have a spouse, you usually have to come together. The
writing was already on the wall for Dr. Woodbury, too. It changed the way things are done around here.
Well, and then the other thing that happened is I got disillusioned when I was in Berkeley, right?
How so?
I was walking down the Berkeley molecular biology department and saw all these big names, these guys, all guys on the wall.
Of course.
And I just thought, I don't know these guys, and they dedicated their lives to something big because they're clearly important, they're on the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't want to do something that nobody was going to care about or have any impact, for. And I didn't want to be a cog in the machinery of the academic, cog in the wheel, whatever.
But that seed was sort of planted. It wasn't like you jumped out and had an epiphany. I'm going to change the way kids learn.
No.
So then after that, what did you do for a living? How did you make money?
So I was a postdoc. I came back after my postdoc in Berkeley. I came back to New Mexico and was working in a number of different labs. And then basically my kids got old enough to start needing school books, and I looked at the school books that were available.
No, this is not going to cut. Not for my kids.
Not for my kids.
Not for a Woodbury.
No, they're Keller, but
not for a Keller.
Not for a Keller. But no, they were awful. They were just there was nothing interesting in them, and it was no real science. And how could you take this information and be even moderately successful in high school or college? And just so you know, I flunked my first college chemistry test. I was not a strong student when I was younger. I couldn't read until the 4th grade.
Okay.
And so books played a big role for me. And I looked at these books and went, yeah, I can do better.
Yeah.
So I started writing this Real Science for Kids series.
And you wrote the first book.
Yes, I wrote chemistry.
We could get that one.
Want to go get it? So some of these images, right? These are all images I took myself, right? These are my graphics.
Sure.
Because I didn't have any staff. I didn't have a photographer. And so this book...
Where do you start with a book like this? So you had an idea, and chemistry? You want to start with chemistry? It seems like you'd start with
something easier, like
I don't know.
So, okay, fair enough.
Like, but I guess that there was maybe too much simplicity already in the curriculum that you were seeing. So you were like, because chemistry to me just sounds tough. That sounds difficult.
Well, there's a personal bias there. So I ended up getting a degree in chemistry. So I'm a chemist.
Okay.
So I'm partial now to chemistry.
Okay. So
that was the motivation. But the other thing that people don't understand about science is that the two subjects that are foundational to all the rest of science are chemistry and physics. The entire world is matter and energy.
Okay.
Chemistry, matter, physics, energy, right?
Even I listen to like esoteric stuff, but I mean Deepak's, one of his recent books is about death, like it's about like life after death, and there are many parts of the book. It comes down into the molecular, just down to the atom, we don't exist, and like that's the type of stuff.
Well, and I'll show you something that we hand out to schools because
or we don't exist, or we're everything. One of the two.
Yeah, we're both actually. So this is why I start with chemistry, because everything is fundamentally built off of an understanding of chemistry. If you want to understand photosynthesis, you need to understand a little bit about chlorophyll, and how that gets converted into sugars, and it's all chemistry.
Okay.
And even understanding a little bit about, magnets, you need to understand a little bit about how electrons move through magnetic material. And
okay, so this was this was your this is what if there was the quintessential book that my kids could be learning right now, it would look like this. It would look like this chemistry.
Yes, it would be chemistry.
And you jumped into middle school though. You didn't make a grade school or younger. So did it take your kids going through like sort of the first few grades before you're like, I need to do something about this curriculum?
No, so basically when my oldest was in the 3rd grade, we were homeschooling, and we had to give her the Iowa Basic Test, and we hadn't covered any science yet. I was busy postdocing, and so I didn't do a lot of science with them. And she tested right at her grade level. Then the next year, I decided to teach her. I had this idea for, giving her a little bit of real chemistry, and I taught her a little bit of chemistry and a little bit of physics. Just how to make a lemon battery, and I think we did a few little kitchen, vinegar and baking soda experiments, and how to plot some data. That was really all I taught her. Okay. She took the Iowa Basic Testing in grade 4, and she tested grade 12 for science.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, and I didn't see the test before she took it.
You were like, I'm a master teacher. I'm the best parent in the world.
I was like, what did I do? What just happened? And it was really interesting.
And she's probably smart too.
Yeah, she's relatively smart. She's not a scientist.
She's not a scientist.
No, she went into computer programming, so she likes that stuff.
Okay.
But basically, I looked at the test and I hadn't covered any of that material. We hadn't covered any of it. But what I was able to give her was enough real content for her to feel confident in any content that came her way.
Okay.
She's like, oh yeah, I've done chemistry and physics, I know this. So one of the things that happens with students who see all those complicated subjects for the first time is it shatters their confidence.
Oh yeah.
Right? It's like, oh no, I can't do this. Mm-hmm. I've never seen it. And then they start the story. Oh, I'm not smart enough to do it. Or
the paradigm of like maybe their sibling took chemistry or their parents went through it, and there's this like, just a paradigm of like science is bad.
Yeah.
And
or something.
I don't like science.
Right.
maybe that was the case in my world. I don't know. I just always had this like, I remember Mr. Fouts at Battleground High School. I remember being in his science class and not understanding a lot of it. Like just being lost, and some kids would get it and I'm like, how did you even... And I remember asking this one kid the question. I was like, how did you get that? How did you understand that? And he was like, it just popped into my brain. And I was like, oh man, it sure didn't pop into my brain.
Well, let me ask you this. If you were thrown into an advanced Chinese or Spanish class and you didn't know how to any of the vocabulary or any of the symbols or any of the terminology or any of the context, and now you're in an advanced language class. Do you
Right.
think you would like it?
Yeah, that particular class was high school. I think it was like around freshman year, which is when I think
Yeah.
it's like the educational system is like, whoa, we better get them ready for
Yes,
college now.
right.
We're gonna, and in high school, I was always under the impression of like, why are these kids taking like such hard classes? I want to take like really easy classes because I don't want to have to work very hard. Because I want to play and I don't want to do a lot of homework. Like, I mean, am I wrong to think that way?
You're going to be an entrepreneur one day. You need to figure out how to do everything the most lazy way.
I just wanted to play soccer. Like that was like my weird high school and play and like go cause trouble and play soccer.
Yeah,
like,
and every kid has their different drive, right?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to be an oceanographer,
Okay.
being born in Silver City, New Mexico.
Sure.
Turns out I get horribly seasick, so that wasn't going to be a career choice that I
My
could
wife
do.
went to SeaWorld camp.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
she
yeah.
loved that.
Oh,
like,
I wanted to be an oceanographer.
Yeah.
And that's what got me ultimately into science, is I was just determined I was going to be this oceanographer. And when I went to college, they didn't really, I went to New Mexico Tech, and it's a mining, school basically, and they didn't really know what to do with me. So they said, take your basic chemistry and physics. And then I found out about chemical oceanography and then thought, well, that's what I'm going to do. And so I focused on chemistry so I could be a chemical oceanographer.
Okay.
But then got to graduate school after taking a 1.5 year break, going to Sweden, working at a nuclear research facility, which was fun.
Nice. Do you speak, what is that?
Swedish?
Yeah.
No. Not anymore, but I learned enough.
You learned quite a bit?
Yeah, I did. And I was actually in Sweden when Chernobyl blew, and we thought it was us, because here we are, getting all this fallout. And anyway, it was interesting. And but then I came back to the States and went to graduate school at Florida Institute of Technology, and I get seasick, and I couldn't handle the smell of all of that. So
sea air.
I bailed on that dream.
Yeah.
And didn't really know what to do with my life, and just came here to grad school and majored in chemistry. So it was a little bit of
And got married to Mr. Keller.
Got married to Mr. Keller.
Dr. Keller swept you off your feet.
He did.
You guys had a couple kids.
Had 3 kids.
Still friends with Dr. Keller today.
We are great co-parents. We had an interesting marriage and a really good divorce.
So we make chemistry for middle school kids. From here, then you start selling these out of your car to at swim meets.
Swim meets, yeah.
Sure. Why swim meets? It reminds me. There's a movie about a lady that with the mop. She makes the mop, and then she's like trying to. They call it carpet bagging. Like I've done this myself.
Before the internet, before e-commerce, you had to drive around with your product and
did the book look
it.
this good?
It's more or less looked like that. Yeah, that's been the cover.
This is a good looking book.
So it was spiral bound in the beginning. It wasn't a nice hardcover, but the cover's been the same. In fact, my ex-husband designed these molecules.
Neat.
He's super brilliant. He taught himself C++ on a weekend and just learned how to render these in a program that's similar to the stuff they use for Pixar.
Well, of course, you don't wrangle Dr. Woodbury unless you
Dr. Keller.
Unless you're
no,
he wrangled you.
Oh yeah, he did.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, he had to.
He had to bring his A game.
He had to totally bring his A game in there, and he did. He's one of the smartest guys I know. So awesome.
There's still admiration. There
is. I respect him.
So this book was immediately successful.
Pretty close.
People liked it. And how else besides swim meets would you go about? Like, did you make 50 copies of it, and then you were like giving them out? Were you selling them right away?
Yeah. So we didn't have a lot of money. I think my first print run was probably 50, and then over time, I just learned about the homeschool market and started going to conferences.
Okay.
And so I would put all my books in my van and pile the kids in there and drive across the country. And
so you go to there's probably conventions.
There were conventions.
Homeschool
and they were big. Back in the day, that was the only way you got curriculum.
And this is in the 90s?
This is in...
Or early 2000s?
Yeah, early 2000s, I would say.
All right.
Yeah, I incorporated Gravitas in 2003, And I had been to some
How'd
conferences.
you come up with the name Gravitas?
Of substance. I wanted it to be substantial. I wanted
Mafia,
it to be
like-
real, like solid. It had to have gravity.
It's a great name.
Yes.
I mean, Gravitas.
Gravitas.
That's a great. It's a great word.
It is a great word.
Yeah. So from and this was going to be your only book.
Yeah,
you
I was
said.
only going to do one. I was just going to do this one little book.
And
I had people saying, "Oh, this is great. Where's biology? Where's physics? Where's
Sure.
astronomy?" And I was like, "Okay, where's?"
so where do we go from chemistry? I mean, what's next on the docket?
For what I created. So I think biology was the next book I made.
That's
And then-
is that the natural learning progression? Would you say?
Yeah. So the way that I would sequence science for a younger student is chemistry, biology, then physics, and then
Okay.
either astronomy or geology. I split chemistry and physics up with biology because both chemistry and physics are what are considered hard sciences,
Okay.
and biology is a little softer.
Okay.
And you can learn enough chemistry to understand biology. You don't need biology to understand physics.
Okay.
You know, physics is all about force, energy, work, and so on. But you need chemistry and physics ultimately to understand, say, astronomy, right?
Okay.
A little bit of biology, how photosynthesis works. It's helpful to know what light is or what energy is.
So there was you use that intrinsic knowledge, and I mean maybe you made up some of that, but like that was your take on it.
Yeah, I mean it was basically, it came out of this, you know, when like I said, I flunked my first chemistry exam and I struggled I felt like I couldn't catch up in college, right? You know, I was always playing catch up, but by the time I got to, you know, graduate school and then a little bit, graduate school and a little bit after that, I had a good solid foundation of the sciences, right? I knew enough chemistry, I knew enough physics, I knew enough biology that I could start to see how they would piece together in a way that would make more sense.
Yeah, by this point you're like 20 years of school in.
Yeah,
right?
and I have the foundation, and when I looked at elementary textbooks, I'm like, wow, this is really crazy the way they're sequencing this. No wonder everybody struggles in high school and
But
college.
that is a I mean that curriculum is based on like very important smart people though. Why would you even question?
Why would I even question that?
This is my favorite question so far. Like, why would you even question the way it's done?
Because experts can be wrong.
Okay, all right. I like that. That might be the title of the interview.
Experts can be wrong.
Rebecca Woodbury. Experts can be wrong.
Right, they can be.
I like that.
And it's actually, it's funny that you ask that because
It's a good question.
Yeah, I've had several people with Ratataz, which we'll talk about next.
Like, how
ask
do
me,
you have the gall? How do you?
Oh, no, not the goal. The hubris is what she asked me.
The
you have a
cojones.
lot of you have a lot of hubris to go against the experts and say that you know how to teach kids science.
Who do you think you are?
Exactly. Who do you think you are?
Well, Dr. Keller knows who you are, but maybe not the rest of the world.
Right.
Right.
Well, and it's fair. It's a fair question. I feel like I get it. You know, a lot of the textbooks are written by bigger companies with supposedly a lot of experts that are
Sure.
designing curriculum, panels and committees and
tests,
and all that to try to make sure that the books that they deliver are going to work for kids.
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at test scores, they're certainly not. And you look at the number of students that feel competent enough to go into STEM careers. I mean, fewer than 20% of our graduates go into STEM careers.
And isn't there a percentage of students now, higher educated scientists coming from out of country?
Yes.
And
It's a huge problem.
Born right here in the United States. So that's
It's a huge problem.
That's a selling point.
The country that tops all the exams, all the testing is Singapore. And if you look at their elementary curriculum, the program that they use for elementary science, it's exactly this. In fact, I discovered
Beautiful.
Singapore science after I had written a couple of these textbooks and thought they would be my biggest competitor because they were doing exactly what I was doing.
Beautiful. But that's great. I mean,
is great.
Were you inspired to find somebody over there and talk to them about this?
No, not at the time. I just thought, you know, they're already doing what I want to do for U.S. schools. This would be something U.S. schools would embrace. I didn't realize how many roadblocks to that would occur. Yeah, so
Interesting.
yeah, so yeah, basically these follow a sequencing that's pretty much identical to what Singapore science does, and Singapore science always scores the top.
Okay.
And I think it goes back to what I showed you earlier, where science is really a language, and you have to start to be familiar with the words and the concepts,
Okay.
early on. It's just like speaking any language. You learn the letters, you learn how the letters form to make sounds, you learn how the sounds form together to make words, you learn how words are put together to make sentences and paragraphs and novels. You don't start somebody off with, advanced Shakespeare if they're just learning the language, right?
Right.
And yet that's what we do for kids with science. We don't give them any of the foundational terms and concepts, and we say, okay, kids, have fun in elementary and mid-school grades, and here you go, high school.
So how many books? So you've got some legs, you have some evidence from Singapore. How many books, or how long? What was the time period that elapsed before the wheel epiphany, the single wheel, the one wheel epiphany occurred? So the one wheel was a device that Rebecca
wanted to ride.
You wanted to ride this one. You were inspired to ride the one wheel, but you didn't know how you were going to go. So you sort of analyzed your own process on how you learned how to ride the one wheel.
Exactly.
And in that process birthed Ratataz.
Correct.
Ratataz?
Ratataz.
Not Ratatat.
Right. So the Taz, this piece Taz stands for tazzle. It's another made-up word. It means talk, tell, and dazzle. And in educational circles, it's called retrieval practice. So once you get through learning something, the way to solidify that knowledge is to teach somebody else how to do it, or to teach somebody else what you think you know. So that's the Taz in Ratataz. Tazzle.
The giving back.
The giving back.
Yeah.
And sharing.
The student becomes the teacher.
Exactly.
Nice. And so, how far into the process was that? Like when you shifted sort of to, and is that like a shift from more middle school to elementary?
No, I've been focused on elementary for a while.
What's the difference between Gravitas and Ratataz?
So Nacho Cat is the company, Ratataz is the product line. I could have put the Ratataz product underneath as a Gravitas product, but I wanted to keep Gravitas as a publishing company. Okay. Partly because if I decided to sell Gravitas or Nacho Cat, I could do that separately. So I wanted separate companies.
Okay. And this is all under the umbrella of Nacho Cat.
Well, under the umbrella of Gravitas. So Gravitas is the holding company for Nacho Cat. Okay. So Gravitas is an S Corp, Nacho Cat is an LLC. Okay. So you can have an S Corp that holds a variety of LLCs. Okay. So, and I have a couple of other publishing ideas I haven't launched yet, obviously, and that's why I wanted to have an S Corp and have Nacho Cat sort of be the first entity under that umbrella. Just a business strategy. Yeah, just a business strategy. Okay. And because the product lines are different enough, I'm
more interested in the difference between the product lines. Moving from Gravitas,
real science for kids,
inspired by the one wheel, to the Ratataz. Yeah. Like what are the differences? What's the purpose?
Yeah. So real science for kids is strictly a textbook curricular program. It's read a book, and it's what I would call a publisher directed program for kids. In other words, I tell kids what to learn, I tell kids how to answer these questions, I test those kids on this content. Okay. And the teacher has a teacher's manual, you do this experiment, right? So it's publisher directed, a program. Whereas Ratataz, I wanted to create something that was a more student directed program, because we all learn in different ways and we all have different questions about what we're learning about, right? So that was the inspiration.
I think this is what you and I were getting into at the salon, like how different people learn differently. How different people
learn differently, and what their interests are.
Sure.
So for Ratataz, I can introduce a topic, say, photosynthesis, and, here's a chlorophyll molecule, and some kid might be like, wow, that's really cool. What are all those atoms, And another kid might go...
what might happen if you, seriously infiltrate the educational system with this? Kids might actually want to go and learn.
That's what I'm hoping. That's the goal. But you might have...
You get to work at it.
I do. I totally, for a variety of reasons. But
because it sounds exciting to me. Like, I want to share it with, my son. I want to, share it with other people immediately.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is neat. And I'm probably not the only one that feels this way. Like, so, I mean, the more this emerges.
I mean, I'm trying to teach kids and parents and teachers how to Ratataz. It's a verb, right? You can learn anything once you know how to Ratataz.
So do you have an educational manual for Ratataz on teaching teachers how to guide, or you didn't say guide, you said what was the word?
Facilitate.
Facilitate.
Yeah, so not specifically. We have a teacher's manual that basically helps a teacher know how to facilitate the Ratataz program, and I do a 2-hour workshop with teachers where I go through the design of Ratataz, the philosophy, what all the different steps are, how many different learning modalities are put together into this one program. And then they get a feel for, there's a knowledge-based component, right, which is the R. There's a student-directed inquiry component, which is the A's. There's the hands-on component or phenomena-based piece, which is the T. Okay. And then the TASL is the retrieval practice piece. So all of these different aspects to learning, all of that supports somebody's learning endeavor. But it needs to be student-directed. In other words, if a student isn't interested, none of this will matter, right? If you're not ultimately interested in find something interesting about this that is particular to you, and ask questions that are particular to your interests, you're not going to learn anything.
So the teacher's manual is every bit as important as the curriculum.
Mm-hmm. It is.
You really need to. Now, do you sell this to teachers, or do you have teachers coming to you more? Or would you market more to teachers that are interested versus teachers that, in sales, as it pertains to sales? Are you going to, there's certain teachers that are man, I like it the old way, thanks. I get a bunch of these.
Yes.
I get a bunch of people coming at me with this kind of thing.
So it's an interesting process selling to schools. It's the teachers aren't the decision makers. So the superintendents or curriculum coordinators are the decision makers. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the teachers are far separated from the admins that are making the decisions about the curriculum, and sometimes they're closer. The principals are somewhat involved. So you can market to teachers, but you need to address the needs of the admins who are making the decisions, right? So, and the needs of the teachers are different than the needs of the admins. And then you have the board that influences. So it's actually a system that's pretty locked in. And unfortunately, for the most part, the students aren't part of that equation. Student outcomes aren't necessarily...
Why are we even talking about the students?
Yes, right. But we want higher test scores, but we are going to we're not really going to look at the needs of the student, particularly in STEM careers, STEM, science fields.
Sure.
To figure out how do you introduce material to students where they can actually absorb and learn it, and apply it to new and novel situations. That's ultimately.
We prefer to have higher scores the way we want to do it.
Well, and we prefer to just check some boxes. This curriculum over here checks these boxes, that then we can say we've done our due diligence in providing a program for our school.
Money.
And we get the money. Just follow the money, man.
let's not discredit the elephant in the room there.
Well,
that's the beast.
The reality of it is, and so the other thing that happens is that most textbooks, pretty much everyone is using the same program. There are 3 main textbook publishers, and there's a great book by Beverly Jacobra, who talks about, it's called The Tyranny of the Textbook. And it talks about, she was a teacher and then she was working for a major publisher. And the 3 main publishers pretty much kill most innovation.
Can we say who they are? Who's the big fat cats?
It's Savas, which used to be Pearson for K-12. So Savas, it's McGraw-Hill, and Houghton Mifflin. Okay. These are the 3 top publishers.
McGraw-Hill, I feel like I've seen on a textbook or two.
So if you go and see what textbooks schools are using, you're going to see those names. Okay. You'll every now and again see another name. There's a few other names out there, but everybody's using the same formula.
I don't know why I'm talking to you and I'm getting these flashes of the last one was Will Ferrell. You sit on the throne of lies.
Yes. No, I think it's not done with any malice. It's just like I said at the beginning.
Right.
This is the way we've always done it.
Right.
And when you look at science education and particularly the textbooks, so curriculum drives what's going to happen in the classroom. It's just. Teachers are going to take that textbook and they're going to teach what's in that textbook. Standards shape those textbooks, but really the publishers, in my opinion, have a responsibility. I think they need more accountability for making sure the products that they produce and have teachers buy is actually going to help student outcomes.
So have you targeted have you targeted these larger, the fat cats? Have you talked to them? Is there a way in there?
No, I want to stay under the radar for now.
You want to fly under the radar? I'm flying under the radar too.
I want to be way under the radar. I don't want them to notice me yet.
You know what's interesting? I was just talking about that in an interview. I was watching an interview that I did and I was editing, and I talked about that with the plaster companies. They're way above me. They don't care about me.
Yeah.
And I'm flying under the radar, and I'm
doing your thing.
And I'm happy doing that. I don't want them to, because I believe in what I'm doing, and I don't want them to know.
Right.
Yes,
and I'm doing.
And they could care less, anyways. It's
it's a little company. Not worried about it.
We've seen you before.
Yep.
We've seen it all before.
Yep.
Thanks, but no thanks.
Yes.
But have you tried? Have you tried to go and talk to anyone in those? Because sometimes you could be surprised too. There might be a division
yes, I
or a
actually
person.
have. I actually set up a meeting with a rep from Houghton Mifflin, and we had coffee here.
Just to see what they say.
I did, and I showed her everything I was doing, and she said, "Yeah, they're just not going to be interested in anything you have because it's so far from the formula they follow." And
interesting.
And what they do is they create books. So the big publishing companies are beholden to their shareholders, right? They need to produce products that sell and make profit.
Okay.
So they produce books they know are going to sell. And the way that they do that is they make sure that the books are pretty much the same every year because the teachers evaluate the books and the teachers want to see the things that they're familiar with. Teachers are overloaded with all kinds, they're inundated with all kinds of things.
Worried about getting shot.
Yeah, yes.
There's a lot on the minds. There's a lot on the minds of the teachers.
But here, this teacher committee has to evaluate the textbooks that they're given. And what they do, and understandably, is trust that the publishing companies have vetted their materials. They're offering the best available science curriculum materials to those teachers. What they don't understand is most of that, all of that content is very much watered down. Textbooks took a huge shift in content from between before and after the 60s. If you look at textbooks in the 1800s, late 1800s and early 1900s, the content in those textbooks was way more high level than what you're going to see in content today. Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
Are they dumbing us down, Rebecca?
Are we dumbing us down? Yes.
They don't want thinkers.
Yes.
They want they want workers.
Yeah.
But the irony is that it seems like as we continue to progress into the 21st century, people are becoming more independent. People are not keeping day jobs like they did in the early part of the 19th.
I actually, again, I think it's not done with any sort of malice. I don't think they're purposely trying to dumb down kids. I think they believe this is the best way to introduce complex subjects to students. But it's based off of old educational theories. If you look at educational research today, there's a lot to support the idea that vocabulary is comprehension, that you can give kids complex concepts and they will rise to the bar, right? They will, they will move their interest up to reach that bar, as long as it's not too far, right? You want to give them small victories. Okay, well, let's study about atoms. And all of a sudden, atoms become a thing. And they start talking about atoms and what atoms can do. And now they're familiar with atoms. It's a small victory. And now they feel confident. I have this confidence that I can communicate about these real science concepts. And you just build that sequentially year after year.
Right.
But that's not the way the textbook publishers operate. So they give these teachers the textbooks that are basically watered down pablum. It's just purified oatmeal. And the teachers are doing their best to evaluate, but all the books are pretty much the same.
Yeah, there's teachers out there. They'll take a mundane textbook and make it fun.
Yeah. and then
they intrinsically know how to teach kids so that they learn and have fun.
More or less,
but still, the curriculum, even in that scenario, they're not learning like the depth of like what you're
and
presenting.
Elementary school teachers in particular don't generally have a science.
So would
degree.
that be predominant feedback? Is that this is way too heady? You're overstepping your bound because like kids are not going to get this information.
Yes, that is the
There's
predominant.
too much.
Yeah, that was the curriculum coordinator that sent me a very.
That was her feedback.
Yeah, she said, when I see anybody trying to teach fourth graders acids and bases, I know it's a farce.
Did she say it's a farce?
It's in an email. It's great.
Don't water it down. Don't sugarcoat it there, lady.
No, it's a farce, and you have.
Wait, was it a lady or a guy?
It was a lady.
Okay.
And you have a lot of hubris. That was the one with a lot of hubris. You have a lot of hubris to think you can go up against the experts, and on the surface it's funny, and on a deeper level, I recognize that she's just trying to do the very best that she knows for her students. She really believes that you can't give kids this more complicated content at a younger age.
No shame.
But partly because we haven't done it. We haven't done it since before the 60s, right? I mean, it's the reason. So I'm a big proponent of public education. I support public education.
But your target market is not public education. It's private schools, Montessori.
For Real Science for Kids, it hasn't been. But my mom was a public school teacher. All my aunts were public school teachers. I was publicly school educated. 67% of students are publicly school educated.
It's a romantic idea.
I think we can. We set the rules.
Yeah.
We can change them.
That's a good attitude.
But it's really difficult, and it requires, not just me, but a whole community of people willing to say, hey, let's make these incremental changes. One of the things you can't do is force teachers to do something brand new without, getting teacher buy-in. You have to get the teachers on board. You have to get the superintendents on board. You have to get the principals on board.
I love what you're up to, though. Are you nuts?
Yes. I'm scaling this Mount Everest in flip-flops right now.
Who else is going to do it? Who else is going to do it if you don't do it?
This is exactly.
You have to think that way. You have to think that way.
Well, I would be happy if somebody else would do it with me. I'm all about let's just
I'm here,
do it
Rebecca.
together.
We're doing this interview. We're doing this. No, it makes me think of think global, act local.
Yeah.
You alter the sphere that you're in, and more than alter. This one was 6,000-foot warehouse with books.
Yeah.
This is more than just an idea. This is happening.
It's happening.
So today, Ratataz and Gravitas.
Yeah, Real Science for Kids is the product line, but the companies are Gravitas and Nacho Cat. Let's see if I can make it any more complicated.
No, it's okay. I mean, just
there has to be a company name and the product line.
Just like chemistry for third edition, it's building blocks. Just like anything that we do. One thing builds upon the next. So you're where are we at today?
So it's pretty exciting.
How many schools are you in? How much? You're generating revenue. You can talk about that.
We're generating revenue, right? This year is going to be tough for the homeschool market because the price of gas is over $5 a gallon.
Did you score on COVID? Was that
we scored a little bit? Yeah, we had.
This was one of those businesses that had an uptick.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I did. So we had a really good year in 2020. Everybody was homeschooling, right? So our product just flew off the shelf.
Okay.
I took all that profit and poured it into developing Ratataz. Ratataz is
a true entrepreneur.
It's a startup.
I'm not putting any of this in the bank. I'm going to do another product.
Spending it all. I'm starting a whole new company.
It's smart.
And
good for you.
To pivot into this public school market. And we got geared up. We built the warehouse. We got everything ready.
So this is new. Last couple of years.
We incorporated Nacho Cat in 2020, and then. The problem was that we had beta tested the program, the Ratataz program, with a lot of students, had huge success. Talked to parents, talked to teachers, talked to even a couple of superintendents, but really when we got into it, didn't know how the system worked. So we started making phone calls. I hired a sales team. We were building the kits, we're hiring a sales team, and all we got were a bunch of closed doors. Just shut door after shut door after shut door.
Okay.
because of the reasons I stated. You can't teach kids these complex topics. And
you're challenging the dominant paradigm.
well, and so what ended
and the curriculum.
Yeah, and
so
what
there's those barriers.
I don't know if you're familiar with Blue Ocean Strategy. Have you read that book yet? I forget the
Well, I'm
authors.
familiar with like the red water. Like
Yes.
that's where the entrepreneurs are. You want to find the blue water.
So that's
Go to the
exactly,
blue water.
you have to create the blue water. One part of the, and if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you know this, right? You have to really believe in what you're doing, and you have to have a passion beyond the revenue, right? You have to be willing to put it all on the line, go in the hole deeper than you've ever been in order to see this through, because that's just what entrepreneurship.
Tenacity.
In risk and a little bit of an, I like to call it grounded megalomania, right? You have to have this megalomaniac sort of like, I'm gonna save the world, I'm gonna fix science education, and you have to have a groundedness to it, recognizing that it doesn't matter if I quite get there, but I have to have that pull me. So there's a structural tension there. You have to let
organized abstraction.
Yes.
It's like intention.
It's intention, but it has to be grounded. It has to be, wake up in the morning and see what's really in front of you.
Yeah, but you got that science background. I'm like jealous. Like it's like she's so organized.
I'm not that.
And she knows things. Like she's got blue tubs everywhere.
The blue tubs are nice, right?
She's color coordinated. Like you didn't want to go like red for this curriculum and blue for that curriculum. It's
blue. Chemistry's blue.
Chemistry's blue. Why the blue?
Biology's.
Do you have blue in your logo? Is your logo blue?
Well, this is our old logo, but
the T's blue.
So we have. The
you
other
use
books.
Blue.
We
You
use
like
a lot of
blue.
blue. I like blue. Chemistry's blue.
Wait, chemistry is not blue.
It is so blue.
You just
water. Water's blue. Chemistry's.
But isn't water like reflection or something of the sky?
It is, but that's chemistry and physics, man. I mean, it's.
You like the color blue, don't you?
I like the color blue.
Come on, man! Don't bullshit a bullshitter, man. You like blue.
I like blue. I like green. I gave geology and astronomy orange or yellow and purple. I don't know. I don't like those as much, but I like.
I'm an artist, so I'm way more esoteric about color, and then you got auras and weird stuff like that. Color is
huge.
Color's it's not just the grass is green.
Well, I don't know. For me, blue makes me feel
like who says chemistry's blue? You say chemistry's blue.
It's way blue.
Maybe. I mean, okay,
I'll have
water.
designers create some, template for one of a new book, and they put, chemistry, and it doesn't have a blue, and I'm like, no, chemistry's blue. You gotta make sure chemistry's always blue.
I like that. Cherished belief. I've heard that be called a cherished belief.
But no, you have to be willing to go all in, and one of the things that drives me is my own experience of feeling like a failure in college and feeling like I had to catch up and never feeling good enough until I actually became an entrepreneur, and even then I never felt good enough.
And the woman track.
Yes, and the woman track. But then I
didn't even know about the woman track.
Yeah, the woman track is tough. The mommy track.
That's the mommy track.
Yeah.
Even worse. It's why isn't there a daddy track?
No, there's never a daddy track. You know this.
The daddy track's
Daddy track is
success.
And oddly, so here's the nice thing about the daddy track is you have somebody there taking care of your house and your kids and your food and your groceries.
Daddy track needs a good mommy.
Daddy track needs an absolutely great
You gotta
mommy.
have a solid mommy for
you
the
do.
daddy
You
track.
have to support all those guys who are super successful, have really dedicated wives.
Absolutely.
It's true with pro sports too. Single women struggle.
Mm-hmm.
You got to prepare all your own meals and worry about the finances. But if you've got, if you're a male cyclist being in the cycling world and you have a good support system, family support system, you have a better chance of being successful. Anyway, that's a different topic, but it's the same parallel. But I run and I meet a lot.
I'm gonna need to talk to my wife.
Yeah.
We gotta change things around.
get her. All right, honey.
Because I'm on the mommy track.
You're on the
How did that happen?
See, this is not right.
She's on the daddy track.
She's on the daddy track? Oh, I think that's
Whatever.
awesome. I've been looking for somebody who'd be on the daddy track. Come on,
Me too, man. Me too. I'm not going to complain about her being on the daddy track.
Right. But I run into people who all the time tell me, and this to me is the tragic piece, I really wanted to be a pharmacist. I was talking to this guy the other day. I really wanted to be a pharmacist, but I flunked, freshman chemistry. Or I wanted to be a medical doctor, and I flunked my freshman chemistry or biology because I didn't understand the coursework. And to me, that's tragedy, right? That's like I had this dream, and I wanted to pursue this dream.
I liked math, and I got thrusted into college algebra. I could do the basic algebra in college. Too easy. College algebra, couldn't do it. And they went too fast.
Yeah.
And I like math.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I guess I don't do math.
Yeah. I mean, I have
I saw a math thing. There was a tutor sign outside the high school, Sandia, next to him. I'm like, I wonder if they would teach me. Like, that'd be kind of fun to learn math again.
Well, I have a brother who in the 4th grade was told he couldn't do math. And this guy has a near photographic memory. He's brilliant.
Yeah.
He can do math better than I can do math. I'm really not very good at math. I just like to solve problems, like puzzles, right?
Yeah.
That's where my passion is.
Well, anybody can do anything.
Yeah, and he just turned it off. I'm not the math person, and he went
power
into
of
different
suggestion.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing?
To these young kids, even adults, but. Yeah, so that's where some of the passion comes in, that we're not giving kids the right tools they need so that if they dream of wanting to pursue some kind of STEM or science career or pursue even journalism career where you're writing about science topics, you still have to have a pretty...
Pursue a journal. I'm doing it. I just decided.
Yeah, right? I'm just going to go do it. But you still, if you want to talk about science, you want to have
do you ever listen to Tim Ferriss' podcasts? Like, they're so fantastic. Like, and he's such a fantastic guy, and he's so smart.
Yeah.
Like,
he's super
and
smart. He's the 4-hour work week guy.
He's the 4-hour work week guy, but like...
And he has a 4-hour exercise.
His podcast eclipses. The 4-hour work week's not even that good. It's like okay. It's like tips on if you want to travel around the world.
Right.
But it's not like, these are life lessons I'm going to take with me. But his podcast is like a porthole into these different people, these personalities. And
so have you ever listened to Sam Harris's podcast? Do you know who he is?
Sam Harris.
I think he's a brilliant podcaster. Metaphysical topics, and he's a big meditator, and he talked about he did an interview where they discussed the resurgence of psychedelic drugs for therapeutic use and the history of psychedelics, LSD and psilocybin and stuff, and where that has changed and just for therapeutic use and
Tim Ferriss is really he's into like microdosing, like mushrooms.
But anyway, I like that he talks about all these variety of topics in a really, I'm just glued on the edge of my seat generally. Depending on the guest, but normally I'm just like waiting to hear. And economics, I don't even like economics, and I'll listen to.
That's a good podcaster.
I'll listen to his podcast on anything economic because I'll learn something. It's an interesting piece to it, and that's something I was talking about. Where we are as a company. I think you asked that a bit. We incorporated in 2020. We got pretty gung ho, thinking these were gonna sell. We're gonna get into public schools, and then we hit these brick walls. And then I had to back up and try to understand what the brick wall is. And it's a combination of systemic systems that have been in place since the 50s and 60s. Yeah. We've gone to a couple of conferences. We're going to go to a few more conferences introducing Ratataz. We're working with superintendents and the decision makers to help them understand why this is different. We are going through and submitting all these requests for proposals to schools because these are schools that are looking for new STEM curriculum, and we're also just getting in their system as a vendor. The other thing we're going to do, which is the low levels, why I want to stay below the radar, is we're creating a program that will align to the Texas standards. Exactly. And we're going to try to get into their adoption cycle. Okay. And if we get into their adoption cycle and we get approved, we can become a curriculum that Texas schools will adopt.
You found a glitch in the matrix.
Yes.
A wormhole.
Yes, but I don't want anybody to know we're doing that yet.
We'll cut that out.
No,
It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter. They're not listening.
They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
But yeah, I think they would care, but I don't think they would care. But anyway, we want to get in and become, and sort of, we're creating this blue ocean, right? We have to define it. We're marketing to it. We're re-educating, right? I've got a lot of the
This is
marketing.
where your education and your science is paramount. It's huge. This is where you can lean on those resources and really put together like a package. It's like, you dissect it just like you're doing a science
It's exactly
experiment.
what I did. And then we're also applying for an NIH grant who's looking for innovative programs. I haven't submitted it yet, but I'm collaborating with schools and, underrepresented students.
What's NIH stand for?
National Institute of Health.
Okay.
So we're going to apply for this grant, and and then we start to have some, street cred, social cred, right? We're like, okay, what is this Ratataz? And then Ratataz itself becomes sort of this buzzword. There's all these buzzwords in education, and we want to become a movement, right?
Is there a curriculum that has done this that you could model?
Not exactly. So
Not exactly.
Back to the tyranny of the textbook. You have a lot of companies that do, like, say, create an innovative curriculum for math. And then as soon as the big companies know about them, they offer them money and say, yes, we're going to produce and publish your program. And then as soon as that company gives in.
Well, that's it. Then you can just cash out, Rebecca. You're done, right? That's it. You can go hang out with Jeff Bezos and be like, let those fat cats deal with it.
I had a company who's reviewing our NGSS alignment, and he's like, when the big companies offer you a deal, you're going to have to say no.
It's coming, Rebecca.
I'm going to take my truck and go.
Or they just squash it. They're like, that's too progressive. We'll just take this. And
they do. So they buy it, and then they squash it because it's not what sells. It's not what they know. The battle of getting teachers on board, and so it's a you just win sort of small battles. And so I've gotten down in Las Cruces, people interested in what I'm doing.
Okay.
I'm going to collaborate with some folks down there. If we get the NIH grant, we'll have schools across New Mexico. New Mexico is ranked 49th in the country as terms of science test scores.
Not 50th.
No, proficiency. It's not 50th. Almost 52nd. No.
We're 52.
Below.
We're 52 in the United States. I think we're below Puerto Rico and a couple others.
Yeah, it's a couple others. But no, and so we seriously have mapped out a strategy. What is the strategy to get in? Well, we got all these stakeholders we have to address. So my marketing team is addressing teachers, addressing parents, addressing, superintendents and the marketing materials, right? Then we have to, hopefully, fingers crossed, we get a grant, or at least we get a step closer to getting a grant. That puts a stamp on this curriculum, NIH funded. Boom, right? Then when somebody looks at it, it's like, oh yeah, who's this Dr. Woodbury, this crazy nut that's been trying to get everybody to Ratataz? Well, look at that, NIH says they think it's pretty good. They wanted to fund it. That immediately boosts us up to when that committee is coming and they're looking at those programs, and they see the red ocean folks, and then they see the blue ocean, me right now that I'm trying to create.
Yeah.
They will not just push me aside.
Yeah.
So it's a long-term strategy.
I like it. It's a plan.
It's a plan. And then, once we get into enough schools, and then, hopefully we're at the tip of the cusp, and we can go.
Yeah.
We start to.
You heard it here first. Rebecca's not selling out.
I'm not selling out.
She's not going to sell out.
Not going to sell out.
You'll see this through to the end.
Yes.
The bitter end.
You'll see me. No matter how deep the.
Well, selling out too looks different. Too. You could get help. You could get insertions, and people could come in and give you aid.
We can get aid as long as it doesn't.
We believe in you. We're going to buy your idea, and let you.
Well, it's the
run
reason
the
I
show.
didn't go with a major publisher in the first place. You know, initially when I wrote Real Science for Kids, I researched publishers.
Okay.
And I didn't want to give up, you know, my creative license, and I didn't want an editor to come in and take everything away that what I was trying to do.
Okay.
And the same is true with Ratataz. You know, it is different. And then hopefully the end goal is for then all the publishers and all the people creating these curriculums go, oh, hey, we need to create a curriculum that has a knowledge-based component, teaches kids atoms and molecules in grade 1, and then they can take off and create all the curriculum and make zillions of dollars, and that's when I can retire.
I like that. Yeah.
You know, then I have made the systemic change. I have created.
Or somebody comes in with your same passion, and you can pass
pass
that
it
torch.
on. You know, I'm not going to live forever, but if I could see the mindset of, oh, hey, we need to actually fill this need, because this isn't a need now. Right now it's not a need, or they don't know it's a need. But once we create the blue ocean market for it, right, and now people understand that this kind of curriculum is what's needed to give our kids the leg up and help them, those kids who particularly want to pursue STEM careers, not feel like they can't do it. Then this becomes the curriculum of choice. This strategy becomes the thing that everybody wants. Then the big publishers go, oh, hey, we need to shift gears and create all of our textbooks based off of this paradigm.
This is how change.
This is how
change occurs.
And
it's a
long. Know, I might be 80 when I see that.
You might never see it.
I may
There's
never
people that build like those structures, you know, where they're like their great grandfathers started this like structure.
But if I can convince enough people that this is the direction, and then the NIH grant will also give us research. It'll show, hey, you know, this is what happens when a kid goes through this kind of program. Because we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but we don't have any solid numbers. So, you know, we've had a lot of kids going through the Real Science for Kids program who are hugely successful, but, you know, we've never tried to tabulate any of that.
Right.
But then it's like, okay, now this is what we want, this is what we need, and this is what the publishers will then work to fulfill the need. They'll shift gears because, again, if their books don't sell, their programs don't sell, because this is what companies or schools are wanting, those companies are going to change what they're creating. And to me, that's success. If I end up being, you know, the company that nobody buys Ratataz anymore, but Houghton Mifflin and, you know, Savant and you know, Harcourt are basically, you know, selling these kind of books, I'll call that a victory.
You know when I think you were successful was when you made this book.
Yeah. No, I mean, I already feel successful.
When you decided that. That was when like to me that's when success occurs.
Yeah.
However long you want to stay on that path is up to you. You know.
Well, I mean, what I mean is, yes, I've been successful and I've impacted a lot of students' lives, but you know, it's sort of like, you know, there's this little war happening, right? This little struggle with current mindset around what kids can and can't learn, and that struggle, I think, needs to be, you know, that needs to be pushed on. It needs to have people saying, wait a minute, you know, we need to change the way we're doing things.
It's singly the most important thing in, like, you know, education. I mean,
well, we want kids to grow up with the tools so that they can solve tomorrow's problems. If we don't give them the right tools, they can't do that. They can't even think about what those are, right? I mean, you're trying to create, you know, a joint compound that solves some problems for your customers that they don't yet know they need, but they will.
Yeah.
And you know, so that's
it's kind of like the blue canisters.
Yeah.
I mean, you're surrounded by them.
Yeah.
You're surrounded by walls.
Yeah.
Like I constantly have to, you know, be enveloped in boring walls. There's nothing inspiring about them.
Right.
You know. So like environment, the environment that surrounds us is.
Yeah. And it makes a huge difference.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I see this going, and
Tim Ferriss always does like he always says if you could put something on a billboard, which is kind of cheesy, but like, you know, closing thoughts, you know, I mean, if you want to come up with a billboard, so although we have several good billboard possibilities throughout this podcast that could.
Experts are sometimes wrong.
Experts are sometimes wrong.
Oh, the one billboard I would say is.
That's golden.
I would say teach the world a Ratataz.
Teach the world to Ratataz, like a dance.
And then they go, what is that? What is the Ratataz? let me show you. It's how you learn how to learn.
Rebecca Woodbury, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Nick.
We'll maybe there'll be a part 2. There was a lot there. I'm nervous about editing it all.
Yeah, just your best.
Just listen to one section at a time. But
We'll piece it together.
no, this was awesome. Cool.
Yes, thank you for
Special thanks to Rebecca Woodbury of Gravitas Productions. We enjoyed having her today on the local cast. You can listen to the local cast on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and be sure to catch us on Facebook and Instagram. The local cast is brought to you by Fresco Harmony, making walls better since 2004. We hope that you have a fantastic day and join us next time on the local cast.